What we're going to do today is create a Phases of the Moon foldable. So when we're finished, it's going to look something like this. We'll have a drawing of our phase as we see it from Earth. On the inside, we will have the name of the phase as well as a diagram showing what it looks like from space. So I'm going to walk you through this. But what you're going to need is a plain piece of paper, a pencil, and a pair of scissors. So go ahead and pause this video and make sure you have all of your materials. Once you have everything ready to go, we are going to set our pencil and our scissors to the side. Before we get started, I also like to mention you may want to get something like a quarter or something that's going to create that nice, neat circle for us. If you have maybe a drink lid, that would work as well. You're just going to want to make sure that it is small enough to fit on one of your flaps. So something like a Gatorade lid would work really well also. But the first thing we're going to do is fold our paper so that it is nice, neat, and we have some neat lines here to cut. So we're going to fold it hamburger style or horizontally. Line up those corners and crease it. And go ahead and unfold it and fold each side in just to that center line and crease. And then the opposite side. So that we have 4 equal sections. Go ahead and pause the video and make sure your paper is folded in half and then in 4 equal sections. And when you're finished, come back. After you've made sure that your paper looks like mine, we are going to fold it in 4 equal sections again. So instead, we're going to fold this hot dog style so that we have a long line down the middle. Crease it, unfold it, and then you're going to fold it down again just to the middle so that we have 4 equal sections going up and down. Okay, so you should have 16 boxes total, 4 by 4. Go ahead and pause the video and make sure your paper looks like mine. Once you have 16 equal boxes, you are going to turn your paper landscape or side to side, and you're going to fold these sides in. What you're going to do is you're going to cut along this fold here, just so that when it's finished, you can flip just one piece out. Just one phase at a time. Okay, so you're not going to cut all the way through. This back piece is going to stay intact, but then you should have little flaps off of the side of that. So with your paper side to side, lift up one flap and just cut until you hit that fold. That's it. I have 4 little flaps here. Turn my paper around and do the same thing on the other side. Go ahead and pause your video and make sure your foldable looks like mine. Now that you have your foldable cut and ready to go, we are going to draw our moon and the phase and what it looks like from Earth's surface, from the perspective of Earth. So I'm going to use a Gatorade cap, stick it right here, and circle on the outside of my foldable so that when it's all closed, I can see each phase of the moon. So I have a nice, neat circle. I'm going to go ahead and complete one circle on each flap. And you need to go ahead and pause your video. And when you are finished, go ahead and resume, and I'll show you what we need to do next after we have all 8 circles. Now that you have all 8 circles, we're going to go ahead and color them in so that we're looking at what we would see from Earth's perspective. So this is going to be our first phase in this top left-hand corner. So let's go ahead and put a 1 here. And the first phase that we talk about is our new moon. And our new moon is when it looks like there's no moon in the sky. It's dark because we are only looking at the back half of the moon, and that'll make a little bit more sense later, but we're only looking at the dark side of the moon. So you're going to go ahead and fill this in. It's a little messy right now, but I'll kind of clean that up in a minute. If you have colored pencils or something, that's fine. You can use a black or gray colored pencil, or just a regular pencil works just fine for this activity. Please don't use a marker, because if you use a marker, it's going to bleed through. So go ahead and fill this in. This is our new moon, and it looks like the moon is all dark in the sky. So after I fill this in, I'm going to open the flap, and on this left side, I'm going to write nice and neat, because this is a study tool that I will use over and over. This is our new moon. Okay, so when I close that, well, I should see my new moon and the title when I open it back up. So go ahead and pause, make sure you filled in your new moon, and you've written the title right here. Here in a few minutes, we're going to draw a diagram of what that actually looks like from space when we're seeing a new moon in the sky. So the next phase is going to be a waxing crescent. Waxing means that it is getting bigger. Waxing means growing. And the light from the moon starts on the right. That's easy for me to remember because they rhyme. The light starts on the right. The light starts on the right. That means that we are revolving counterclockwise around the Earth, and we see light on the right-hand side first. After we start from total darkness, we have our new moon. So go ahead and draw a little banana shape there, and then you're going to color in that left side. You can also remember this. Waxing means that it's growing. It started from nothing, and now we all of a sudden see a little bit of light. And a crescent shape is going to be like a crescent roll. Or crescent starts with a C, and it's kind of a C shape here that we can see. Now right now it's backwards, but that's because the light starts on the right. So this is going to be our waxing crescent. Go ahead and make sure you've colored this. And once you've colored this in to look just like mine with the light on the right side and dark on the left, then you can resume the video and we'll move to the next step. Okay, now we need to write our title. So this is a waxing. Waxing means it's getting bigger, and crescent is the shape, which is a C shape. Waxing crescent. So go ahead and write down waxing crescent. Now, as I mentioned, waxing means that it's getting bigger. So our first phase was totally dark. Our second phase, we have a little bit of light. And then anyone in between, anything that's sort of a C shape is going to be a waxing crescent. But now we're going to move until we see half of the moon. but it's actually half of the half. So this is going to be our first quarter. The light is still on the right. I'm going to color in that left-hand side. And again, this is our first quarter. First quarter. So once you've colored it, go ahead and write the title. First quarter. After that, we are going to move on to what's called a gibbous. Now, gibbous means swollen. So we have just a small C shape of light. Here we have a quarter of the moon. And then next is going to be bigger than a quarter, but not quite a full moon. So we actually have just a sliver of darkness. And the way that I remember that is that if gibbous means swollen, it's just a little bit bigger than a half. So anything bigger than this quarter right here is going to be gibbous. So it's like if this was just a little bit swollen, it's just a little bit bigger than a full moon, or bigger than a quarter, but smaller than a full moon. So this is going to be still getting bigger. So it's waxing gibbous. Gibbous, waxing gibbous. So we start from a new moon. The light starts on the right, and it's getting bigger, so it is waxing. Now, the gibbous phase means that we're bigger than a quarter or bigger than this half that we can see, but smaller than a full moon. That means the next phase, I've been forgetting to number them. 3, that's our fourth phase. Our next phase is going to be our full moon. So we're going to leave it just like this. We're not going to color anything in because we can see all of the lit side of the moon. So this is our full moon. This is going to be 5. Now there's nowhere to go but down. So what we are going to do, if the light starts on the right, it means it's going to start disappearing from the right first. So once we start to shave a little bit of this moon off, it's now bigger than 1/2, but smaller than a full moon, which means it's going to be gibbous. It's going to be swollen. But we're not waxing anymore because we're not getting bigger. So now we are waning. And I'll in class, we'll talk about a way to help you remember that. But waning gibbous is going to be our 6th phase. Waning means it's getting smaller. And gibbous means it's that swollen shape. Swollen shape. The next phase, if we move backwards from where we started, here's our gibbous. We're going to move to our quarter. Now, our phases are almost finished. This is going to be our 3rd quarter. We're on the end of our phases of the moon, our lunar cycle. But it's also going to be 1/2 of the half of the moon that we see. So half of 1/2 is 1 quarter. Okay, so this is going to be our 3rd quarter. Our 1st quarter, the light is on the right, and our 3rd quarter, the light is on the left. This is our 3rd, or sometimes this is called our last quarter, but we're going to call it the 3rd quarter. 3rd quarter. And our last phase before we cycle back to our new moon is going to be just a small sliver of the moon, but the light is on the left. This is our waning crescent. And again, this is the C shape. So it's a crescent shape. C shape means it's crescent and it's getting smaller, so it's waning. Waning crescent. Okay. So here we're going to write waning crescent. Okay, so go ahead and make sure you have all of your moons drawn. Make sure that the light and the darkness are put in the same spot that mine are. So go ahead and pause this video and check your shapes. And once you know that they're good to go, I'm going to go ahead and open it and show you the text. Make sure you have the words in the right place. So once you check your shapes, we're going to go ahead and flip out our terms. On this left-hand side, we start with new moon, then move to waxing crescent, first quarter, then waxing gibbous. And on the right-hand side, we have our full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, and waning crescent. So once we have those, we're going to draw a little diagram in the middle to show where the moon actually is in its position around as it revolves around the Earth, because that's what's giving us our phases of the moon. So when we look at our new moon, it's going to be in line with our sun and our Earth. So before we get going on all of our diagrams, I'm going to have you go ahead, just so we know that this is Earth. We're going to draw a little sun real quick and draw an Earth. And those positions are not going to change. So you're just going to quickly draw a sun and an Earth. Sun and Earth. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So once you have all 8 of these drawn, go ahead and come back to this video. So now that we have all of our little diagrams started, we're going to go ahead and draw in the moon and where that's going to be. Now, the moon in the sky is almost always going to be half lit up. So what happens is we have the sunlight that comes, and when our moon is lit up by that sun, half of it is going to be in darkness. It's going to be in its own shadow. So the only thing that changes, right now you can see half of it is lit up. The only thing that's going to change is actually going to be our view of the moon. So what part of the moon do we see? What part of this lit half do we see at any time? So when it starts and we have our new moon, we're actually looking at the shadow of the moon's shadow on itself. So what we have is the moon, which is facing the sun, and our view is going to be the back half. So standing on our surface, we look out at the moon, and we're going to see only the shadow. And as it continues to revolve around the Earth, it's going to move counterclockwise, which is this way. Toward the left, I guess. So it was in line between the sun and the Earth, and now it's going to move just to that left side just a little bit. So half of it's still in the sunlight and half of it is still in its own shadow. But what happened is it's now moved to the side from Earth, and now we can see just a little bit of that lit area. So here we have our new moon, and then it's going to start to revolve and move across the sky, and now we can see just a little bit of that lit section of the moon as it moves around Earth. So that's going to be our waxing crescent. And then as it continues to revolve, now all of a sudden we can see half of that lit half. So this half is always lit up, but we can only see half of it, which is going to be 1/4 of the full circle. So if this is our moon, this half is always lit up. And now all of a sudden I can only see half of it. Half of 1/2 is going to be 1/4, kind of divided like this. So that's kind of where we end up with our first quarter, or one way you can think about our first quarter. So we can only see 1/4 of the half that's lit up. So that is going to be at a 90-degree angle. Half of our moon is still lit up, and half of it's in darkness, but we can only see 1/4 of it. So the moon is going to go ahead and keep revolving around the Earth. Now we can see almost all of the lit side, not quite all of it, but close. And that's going to be our swollen, our gibbous. So this is our first quarter. This is going to be any of these gibbous, 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 gibbous. As we move from this 90-degree angle back to our straight line, or 180 degrees, which is going to end up giving us our full moon. So again, we're going to be in a straight line, but from this position, we can only see the lit side. This is what we're looking at. So if we are standing on Earth's surface looking out at the moon, we're only seeing the lit half. That's going to be a full moon in our night sky. And the only way to go from here is down. So we're going to slowly continue revolving. This is more than half, but not quite full. So this is gibbous, 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 gibbous for a few days. And that's going to be here in space. Until finally we get back to the third quarter. We've covered 3/4 of our revolution. We started here. We started in a straight line here, and it's gone all the way around 3/4. If you look at that, that's like 3/4 of a pizza. This is where we started, and we revolved all the way around. So it's 3/4 of the pizza. So that's our third quarter. I don't need that line. I just wanted you to see that. And that's where we are going to see this from Earth's surface. It's our third quarter. And then as we continue to get smaller and smaller, this is going to be kind of C-shaped. It's our crescent, crescent, crescent. And we're going to see just a little bit of that lit side from Earth's surface. Now, if you kind of cover, like if I'm standing on Earth's surface and I look out, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. But if I'm sitting on Earth's surface and I cover kind of where I would be looking, or what I would be able to see from the surface, you can see, I can only see a small sliver of that. So that's showing you kind of what your perspective or what your view would be from Earth. So then the Earth or the moon is going to continue revolving around until it gets back to its new moon phase. Okay. So a couple more things. If you need more time on any of this, make sure you pause. You can go back in the video. But we start with our new moon phase. The light starts on the right. I'm going to go ahead and move this so you can see this really well. But we start with our new moon, and the light starts on the right. So as the moon is revolving around the Earth, it's not that the moon itself is spinning on its own axis, which it does a little bit, very slowly. But it's moving in relationship to the Earth, just like we see in our diagrams here. So this is the motion we're talking about as it moves around the Earth. But we start with our new moon, and then at night we see a little bit more. This is waxing. It's getting bigger. It's waxing. If you've ever waxed like a surfboard, what you're doing is you are adding wax to the surfboard. You are adding layers to it. It's for grip, but you're still adding to it. So Here it's getting bigger. This is still waxing crescent, waxing crescent, waxing crescent, waxing crescent for a few days. And then we get our first quarter. Now we're bigger than a quarter, so we're gibbous, still growing. So it's waxing gibbous, waxing gibbous, waxing gibbous, waxing gibbous until we hit a full moon. And it starts to continue, it starts to get smaller, and we end up with a waning gibbous. Waning means it's getting smaller. Waning gibbous, waning gibbous. Third quarter, waning crescent, new moon. And we just continue through that lunar cycle every about 29 days. And that is how we end up with our phases of the moon. We'll continue talking about this, but this is just our walkthrough of a good study guide to help you understand what the phase is, its name, and its position in the sky, because these are all things that you will be tested over.